What's up, everybody? My name is Josh Rodriguez, and this is The Flex. What I do is I take your questions and your comments on Dustin's waiver wire video, and I answer, hey, who should I start in my flex? And I tell you who to start in your flex, and usually I am right. Last week I was usually right. I did say that the Bucs were not going to put up any points against the Saints, that the Saints would blow them out, and I was wrong about that, but I was right about Peyton Barber, so do not act like I was wrong about that. I didn't say take Saints minus 9.5. I said don't start Peyton Barber, and I was correct. Let's move on to week number 2. This is the flex. All right, our first question comes from Justin, and he wants to know who he should start in his flex for next week between James Conner, Devonta Freeman, and Joe Mixon. Here's what we're going to do first. We're going to politely take Devonta Freeman. We're going to grab him. We're going to put him on the bench, and we're going to leave him there for now until he can prove he's healthy. He's solid. I like him a lot for the season. But he's hurt, kinda, we think. I don't know, and you're asking me between two people who I believe are high-end running backs in fantasy football. So Devonta Freeman, get out of here for now. Next, I'm going to tell you, if you can, start both James Conner and Joe Mixon. I don't know what your lineup looks like. You must have two other kick-ass running backs where you're deciding between James Conner and Joe Mixon because they both should be must-starts every week. So I'm going to assume you have two kick-ass running backs and you need to choose one, and I'm going to tell you to start James Conner. I like Joe Mixon a lot. I have him on a few teams that they're playing against Baltimore, and if you're asking me to choose one, I just like James Conner's matchup better and his situation better as well. Listen, Joe Mixon did not get vultured at all with Giovanni Bernard last week. They were playing against the Colts, so it is an easier defense to go against, and he did put up numbers. But Gio's still kind of there. It's a rivalry game against a division rival. And James Conner is going to see all of the touches. He literally has no competition whatsoever. Le'Veon Bell is not even reporting back to the team. The Steelers are like, you're not even on our team anymore. Get out of here. James Conner's the man in Pittsburgh. Start him. They run the exact same offense with him in there. He can score at least 1 to 3 touchdowns a game. I think he's guaranteed to score next week against Kansas City. So start James Conner over Joe Mixon. But if you can, start both of them. All right, our next question is from Clyde, and he wants to know who to start in his flex between Dion Lewis and Tarik Cohen. And I was a huge Derrick Henry believer at the beginning of the fantasy football season, but after the game script in the first game, you got to admit Dion Lewis is the man there right now in Tennessee. I would start Dion Lewis. Nothing against Tarik Cohen. He's just not the man there in Chicago, and they're actually throwing the ball more to Jordan Howard. They're not phasing out Tarik Cohen, but they are getting Jordan Howard involved in the passing game, and that's where Tarik would shine. I know it's PPR. I know that Tarik Cohen is a nice option in PPR, but he's more touchdown dependent. Dion Lewis saw 66% of the snaps last week against the Miami Dolphins, even with Derrick Henry starting with the first 8 snaps of the game. So I don't know. I'm going Dion Lewis here. I think he's a solid flex play. I also think he's a solid RB2 play. Stash Tarik Cohen when you need a buy. Dion Lewis is the play here. All right, our next question comes from Alec, and he wants to know who he should start in his flex standard league between Chris Hogan, Quincy Enunwa, Brandon Marshall, and Keelan Cole. First, take Keelan Cole, toss him to the side. You're not starting him. Let's talk Brandon Marshall a little bit and that Seahawks offense. We have no idea what's going to happen. We don't know what that Seahawks offense is going to look like. I'm not saying Brandon Marshall's not going to be a viable fantasy option from here and the rest of the season. I'm just saying we have no idea, and fantasy football is about predictability and probability, and if I can't determine that, I'm not starting him, period. I just wait a week or two. Stash him. Don't drop him. Just stash him and see what happens, right? All right? Then we got Chris Hogan. Chris Hogan is someone who I was pretty high on going into this season, but he had 1 reception last week. 1 reception. Are you serious? Listen, I know Tom Brady's his quarterback, but they just signed Corey Coleman. I don't know how they're going to work him in. I don't think they're going to work him in right away, but it's kind of like, what's going on with Chris Hogan? I don't know what his role is. I thought he would have at least 8 to 9 targets last week. Didn't have that. Wasn't much of a factor at all, and that was disappointing to see. And then seeing what Quincy Enunwa did against the Detroit Lions, I think you got to go with him. Go with Quincy Enunwa. Listen, him and Sam Darnold seem to have some sort of connection. I think Quincy's one of the most underrated players in the league, to be honest with you. And I might just be saying that because I'm from New York and I get to see him every week. I'm not even a Jet fan, by the way, but I get to see him every week. And he is the real deal. He just needs a quarterback. And I think Sam Darnold can be that quarterback. I think Quincy might be a must-start every week. Yeah, I'm kind of saying it. Like a wide receiver, too. Maybe even flex play for the rest of the year. Start Quincy Enunwa. I think he does well. I think they beat up on the Dolphins. And I think he scores a touchdown. All right, our last question comes from Lusty, and he wants to know who to start in his flex PPR between Allen Hurns, Nelson Aguilar, Devin Funchess, and Tevin Coleman. And I gotta admit, guys, this was a tough one But we're going to make tough questions here easier on the flex by taking Allen Hurns and not only putting him on the bench, but kicking him off your roster because there is no Dallas Cowboy that should be on your roster not named Ezekiel Elliott. I don't care if Allen Hurns scores next week and you want to get on the computer and say, oh, Josh, you told me not to start Allen Hurns, you scored a touchdown. I don't care if he scores next week. He shouldn't be on your roster, period. He's not going to be consistent, and fantasy football is all about consistency and predictability, and there's no Dallas Cowboy wide receiver that can give you that. Get him off of your roster. Don't start him next week. You have way better options. Way better options. And if he throws up 30 points, I'm sorry. But it's not going to happen, I promise you that. Moving on, we got Tevin Coleman, whose value is kind of going up because Devonta Freeman is kind of hurt. But Freeman looks like he's going to play next week, and they're playing against the Carolina Panthers, who have one of the best front sevens in the league. So you have to believe that Coleman's going to be more involved if you want to start him. You also have to believe that Freeman's a little more hurt if you want to start Coleman. And even if that was the case, I don't know how successful Coleman's going to be against that front seven. I don't like the matchup, so I'm going to sit Coleman in this scenario. Now you have Funchess, and then you have Aguilar. Funchess, I think, is going to be okay. When Olsen went out, he was basically the wide receiver one for Cam last year, so I think he's going to be okay, but I do think that they're going to revolve their offense more around Christian McCaffrey, try to get him going, short passing game, because let's be honest, their offense didn't look good last week either, so I don't know how I feel about Funchess starting next week against Atlanta. I would go Nelson Aguilar, even if Nick Foles is starting, because Nick Foles looked his way a lot, and this is a PPR league. Nelson Aguilar can easily have 8 to 10 receptions for 80 to 100 yards, and he might get in the end zone as well. The Tampa Bay Bucks are horrible. Yes, I know what I said last week, but they did give up 40 points. It's not like they didn't give up all these points. Granted, it was against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints, but the Eagles' offense is not bad itself. I think Nick Foles or Carson Wentz, whoever starts, has a good day. I think Nelson Aguilar is involved in the offense. Alshon's still out. I think he gets you at least 8 to 10 receptions, probably gets in the end zone. I think Nelson Aguilar is the safest bet there. And that does it for week 2 of the Flex. Thank you for joining me. My name is Josh Rodriguez. Like I said, if you want to ask me a question to be on the show, you got to go to Dusty's video where he talks about the waiver wire. That's where you ask your questions. That's where I pull them from. So join me next week, week 3 of the Flex. Until then, I am Josh Rodriguez, signing off.